The main unit was vacant and it had been damaged. The bathroom window was broken. The door that goes from that unit downstairs to a shared laundry was bashed in. It looked as if squatters were camping out there. The woman in the basement was a fentanyl addict. They have 3 young children, so you can imagine they're on high alert. And I said, okay, tell her we'll forgive the back rent that's owing and we'll give her first and last month's $1,000 to go somewhere else, and we'll pay her $1,000 in moving costs. Most private lenders would have just not dealt with the problem. They would have sold it as is and let somebody else deal with the problem. But I can tell you, if you deal with the problems, the rewards are much, much better, and it can become much easier to exit. Okay, welcome back to The Wealthy Lender. This is episode 18. I'm Chris Nichilo, licensed mortgage broker, financial literacy advocate, and founder of Magnetic Capital Group, Canada's premier private mortgage firm. And that's obviously my opinion. Today's episode is about one of the most challenging files we ever managed. We took possession of a triplex and we were expecting, some minor repairs, but we walked into more of a crisis, a squatter on the main floor, a drug addicted tenant in the basement, and a struggling family trying to hold it together upstairs. So this wasn't just about real estate anymore. It was about leadership, strategy, and protecting investor capital in the middle of chaos. It's an ongoing file, which makes this unique that we're talking about it. And in this episode, I'm going to walk you through how we turned a nightmare, or should I say, are turning a nightmare into a stable asset, and sort of the critical decisions that made that possible.
Oh,
Hey,
this is
Nick.
a fascinating story. Because in the previous episode, you mentioned okay, we're going to stop the bleeding. It's all about not allowing mold to spread. But when you're dealing with people and people going through this level of, chaos, what does stop the bleeding? What's the first, what enters your mind? What does stop the bleeding even look like?
Well, this is a unique one, very different from the one in the last episode with the water damage, because in that one, if you recall, I had a hunch there was something wrong, and then I went to the property, noticed it was abandoned, and we took steps to take possession of it, secure it, and then do what we did. Here, this one was very different. The borrower dragged this out with us for months before we could actually take possession of the property. In retrospect, we had great advice through this whole process, but the borrower continued to take partial actions that bought time in the process. And you run into this sometimes, and it's delicate. You're trying to move the ball forward in the process, but the borrower proved to be very difficult here, until eventually, we had made so many proposals and tried to negotiate a way out with this borrower, but it just became very clear that they were wasting our time, and so we went to the legal process to take possession. When we got there, the idea was to assess it, because I was hopeful that we could simply sell the property in its current state, and that's always the goal. You're in possession. The first calculation you do is, if we sell this at fair market value, are we good? And if the answer is yes, then you sell it at fair market value. But when I went to look at the property, the main unit, so three units, an upstairs, a main floor, and a basement. The main unit was vacant, and it had been damaged. When you walked in there, the bathroom window was broken. The door that goes from that unit downstairs to a shared laundry was bashed in. The bottom half of the door was broken right in. It looked as if squatters were camping out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw that, I knew we had more of a problem, because, again, similar to the other one, if it's in that state, first of all, you're talking about a triplex, which is essentially an investment property. So if you're going to sell it, your target audience is an investor.
Right.
And an investor, what an investor wants more than anything is turnkey. Like, show me a triplex that's fully occupied and driving a predictable amount of rent every month, and then you can justify the value.
Yeah.
So completely different type of property and assessment that's necessary. So when I see the state of the main unit, I know immediately I've got a bit of a problem. Now, I didn't know the tenant in the basement, had never talked to them, but I had made contact with the tenant upstairs. So my thinking shifted when I realized the state of the main floor, to see if I could ally the other tenant, right? Because now I think I need eyes and ears there. I'm wondering what the story is. How did this get broken into? Why is the door kicked in? It didn't make sense. So I went upstairs and I knocked on the door, and they were gracious enough to let me in. And I introduced myself, and I asked them to tell me what's going on here. I told them who we are, that we're now in possession of the property and effectively their landlords, and that I just wanted to come by and meet them and establish some rapport. Would they be willing to tell me anything about what's gone on here with the last landlord? And keep in mind, their landlord, unless he was a really great landlord, if he wasn't a great landlord, he wasn't a great borrower either. We have that in common, right? So
Allies.
yeah. So I took the approach of, look, let's see if they're willing to tell me what's going on, and they did. They told us that the woman in the basement was they believed a fentanyl addict. They have 3 young children, so you can imagine they're on high alert. And the squatters were friends of hers that were coming around, birds of a feather.
Yeah.
And so this posed another big problem, right? Because it's difficult to get somebody like that out of there, but almost impossible to sell it with her there.
Right.
So what we did was, I had asked in the conversation, there was a moment where I asked, how are payments with the rent? How are you sending payments and whatnot? And the guy said to me, look, he said, we were paying, $1,700 a month until about 9 months ago, when the landlord raised the rent on us by $150 a month. And I thought to myself, wow, well, here's an opportunity, because that borrower wasn't paying us all that time. So he had raised the rent, but he wasn't paying the mortgage.
Right.
So I said to them, I said, listen, that money was never making it where it needed to go. So he was putting it in his pocket. He wasn't paying the property taxes. He wasn't paying the mortgage. I said, I think it's unfair that you guys had to pay that increase. How would you like to go back to $1,700 a month? Well, that was the gesture, right? The appropriate gesture in my mind. And of course, it was received very well. And then I felt like I had the license to build a relationship with that tenant, and asked them if they could be my eyes and ears. And I assured them in return, we were going to make the experience of living there better. And so the wheels start turning in my head. Now that I have someone who can report to me on things that are happening at the property, that gives me a modicum of control. Then I come back and I think to myself, how do I, what's the plan here? At the time, I didn't think in its current state that we could generate an offer that was enough to get us out. But I loved the fully rented version of this property, because when I did the math, what we could get from upstairs, middle, and downstairs collectively was going to be enough cash flow to not only pay the mortgage, but the property taxes and make a profit.
When
And
you say
that's
current state, you're referring to like the physical state of the property, or the tenant situation?
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always both. So, anyhow, so what we did is we had to break down the plan and decide what's the first step. Well, the first step was to deal with the tenant in the basement. And when I went down there, we got in to see the unit, and the unit not in great shape, not to code. Like, you could just tell it was makeshift, put together, and had been, damaged. Now, it did not show this way in the appraisal. So we figure some of the damage and whatnot, some of the, some of the things that contributed to its current state had been done recently, since before, or since we had put on the mortgage and after we put on the mortgage. So, it's tough to see that, but now you're dealing with some liability potentially, right? It's not to code. You might get the city might come and inspect it at some point. Like, you've got, somebody with a lifestyle that would attract attention from the police or the city or whatnot. So it's just a ticking time bomb is how it felt.
Yeah.
So it felt like the number one thing we needed to do was to get her to leave. And so we had discussions with the lawyers, and they were like, look, you're going to have to go through the rental tribunal and all this. It's a nightmare, is what we were told. And it might take a year and a half to get her out. So I said, okay, well, how many months of rent is she behind? And they did the roll, and it was 4 or 5 months. I can't remember exactly. She was paying like $1,100, $1,000 a month, something like that. So there was 4 or 5 months of back rent. And I said, okay, tell her we'll forgive the back rent that's owing, and we'll give her first and last month's $1,000 to go somewhere else, and we'll pay her $1,000 in moving costs, and see how that goes. And to the lawyer's credit, he pitched it they found that the woman had a social worker, that she was in a program, and so they were able to get in touch with the social worker. She took the deal.
Man,
it took a month or two, I think, for her to find a place, maybe 6 weeks for her to find a place, but she left peacefully. Then we're able to go in and assess the unit, have a contractor come in, make sure. So I didn't want to fix the main unit while she was still there, because it could just get damaged again.
Yeah.
So all in all, we're in the process right now of improving it, right? So we're going to make sure it's to code, and it's not a tremendous amount of money. I don't know the exact figure right now for us to put into it, but the amount putting in versus what we'll get out in this particular case is exceptional. It costs very little. It's all cosmetic work that we need to do in there. And when it's done, we should be able to generate, I'm going to say, somewhere in the $4,500 a month range for rent across the 3 units. And that's more than enough to pay, like I said, the property taxes and restart interest payments to investors. So there will be an interruption, right, where they're not getting interest payments. But we stopped the bleeding on this property, and it appears we should be able to restart the interest clock. The other thing is, once it's redone and you've got 3 tenants in there, they're good tenants, the place looks nice, and it's cash flowing like that, it's cash flowing with a private mortgage on it. Imagine how it would do if it had a bank mortgage on it.
It's attractive again.
It becomes a very attractive investment property for a new buyer. And the renovations and leasing it up will improve the value, right? They'll increase the value. So you're in a market that's not really favorable right now to a scenario like this, but by doing the right things and working in a methodical, sort of strategic way, you can get to a positive result. And what a contrast, right? Like from the last one, where we're talking about just bringing the property up to an acceptable standard so you can get just enough to get out. And here you're looking at, okay, how do we maximize attractiveness to an investor by sprinkling a little bit of love in it, right? Dealing with the problems, right? Because most people, what they would have done, right? Most private lenders would have just not dealt with the problem. They would have sold it as is and let somebody else deal with the problem. But I can tell you, if you deal with the problems, the rewards are or can be much, much better. And it can become much easier to exit.
So you're saying the common reflex would have been sell at a loss, live to fight another day and just redeploy the capital. But even though you're taking a loss, it's just part of the game kind of thing.
I have never understood it, but I have met with so many operators of mortgage investment corporations, pooled vehicles
Mm-hmm.
who yeah, just write these off. And from a business perspective, it's a bottom line killer. You're basically throwing away that money that you've lost. Now listen, will we be able to go a lifetime without ever losing? No, but you can minimize losses. Investors really never have to lose if you're managing things properly. There's in my opinion anyway, there's no reason. If you do things the right way from the beginning, you're already minimizing the chances of default with your underwriting, and then your midterm management, and administration of the mortgage ongoing from day one. If that's strong, you're limiting the chance for something to get away from you or go significantly off the rails. And then if there is one that goes through it, the chances of it being a complete disaster are very low. And we've seen some of those scenarios, like the one from the last episode where you were really challenged. But again, don't panic, think it through. The collateral is very powerful. How do you utilize it? What do you do with it? Do you rent it? Do you sell it? Do you fix it? And again, I think the other big distinction here is understanding who the audience is. Who's the buyer? So that has to factor into your plan. If you recall from the last episode, we identified that the buyer for that property to get us out would be the end user, a family, right? Someone who's going to live in it. In this case, the buyer is an investor, and what do they want? Turnkey. So deliver that and you will get your top price. You can justify, you can say to somebody, hey, listen, we're investors too. We invest in mortgages. Okay. We need this much to get out. And if you take it at that price, we've done the work of leasing it all up for you, refreshing it for you, and so on. It's all built in. And now you're just cash flowing. We're handing you a cash flowing asset.
Yeah, you're speaking the same language.
You're speaking their language. That's right. And a person in that situation may take bite the bullet of saying, okay, I'll give you your price because this is, I know long term I'm killing it, right? And so it's just a deal that's made to happen. So, anyways, all that to say, they're very different. These types of scenarios, and again, it's keep a level head and work your way through them.
Music to my ears as an investor.
Yeah, I mean, it's this one is not done yet, but I expect it to work out just fine. And I love that we don't just write, like we just don't write mortgages off, like we never have. And I think that's a feather in our cap. And every time we're able to solution one, it just gives me more fuel to that thinking that if you do things right from the beginning, you're okay. You'll get out.
Yeah, and the solution, like sometimes it's so counterintuitive. I don't know if there was like a meeting with the investors, or if anyone had to sign off on the decision of paying the
Great question.
drug addict tenants rent. But if the priority is to just get them out, it's like, who cares? $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. It's like they're out. The problem is gone. You're not sitting there for a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. If that saved us 1 month, at the end of the day, if we look back and we go, it would have taken us a lot longer if we didn't get her out when we did. Well, 1 month of the mortgage interest is probably just about what we paid her.
Yeah.
To go away. Now, what's the worst case scenario? They told us it could have taken 12 to 18 months. So what's the cost of that?
And no yield for 18 months.
A whole lot more than $4,000 to $5,000, $6,000. But your question, about essentially administering the mortgage, it's so key to understand that you if you do this yourself, you're going to find yourself at some point maybe in a position where you've got to take action. And if you hesitate, if you don't know what to do or you don't have the resources to do it, then people should know that that's a risk. That is a real risk, that you get caught in a position. What if you didn't have the money to get her out? What if you didn't have the money to do a little bit of improvements? So the fact that we're a company that has some resources and can do that obviously gives us an advantage, in situations like this. And it is certainly an insulation for investors, against these types of sort of landmines. And you shouldn't be afraid of them. The process is there to support you. The legal process is in place. You just need to go through it and know how to go through it. And then, be hands-on. It's funny. We have 100 mortgages. If we had 100 mortgages under our administration, probably 2 take like 80% of my time.
That's wild.
Yeah, because those ones are commanding all of the attention because they're bleeding, right? So if you're bleeding, you got to pay closer attention. But if you do, if you turn a blind eye to them, they're going to die. But if you triage them, most of them survive. In our case, all of them so far.
The vast majority go well.
Yeah, the vast majority go well. Yeah. So interesting, right? So now we got 2 good case studies that people could listen to and just get a sense for what goes on. The big thing I want people to take away from this is don't be afraid of the process. First of all, it's unlikely to happen to you. You could do 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 of these, and it might never happen. It's that good. But when it does, the process is there to support you. And it starts when you underwrite. It starts with, not biting off more than you can chew, not getting yourself into situations where, from the beginning, like if you look back later when it goes upside down, you go, oh my God, what was I doing? I shouldn't have, I could have seen that coming. So don't be afraid. Just stop, think, don't panic, make a plan. It's all common sense, really. It's just common sense. Who's the buyer, right? Because ultimately, you take possession of property. Ultimately, the job is to get rid of it.
Yep.
Right? Convert the asset into capital, pay your investors back. Everybody goes on. How you get there? Well, you have to think.
Depends what the problem is.
What's the problem? Who's the end buyer you're catering to, and how do you serve them the best version of what they want without breaking the bank?
No, I enjoyed that story. Yeah, I knew it'd be a good one. So,
I'm glad you did. All right. Well, we will talk again next week.
Until next time.
Happy lending.
Bye-bye.